Hi, and you're very welcome back to the League of Ireland podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. I'm here with Dean Zambra, co-host as usual on our even numbered podcast, episode 10, as I mentioned in the introduction. Dean, you're very welcome back.
Thanks for again. How's things?
Great. It's been a week of welcome backs for you. After a couple of games out with injury, you were back on the bench for Longford last night. Delighted to be back involved within the squad, the playing squad on match night.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working really hard to be available. One of those niggly injuries that you're not sure how long it's going to be, and you're not sure how right you are even when you declare yourself. But I was anxious to get back and even be available and be an option. So obviously talking to the manager all week and was trying my best to be available to him, and I was last night, but obviously didn't have to use me in the end last night. So looking forward to the next game and hopefully playing a part in that.
Yeah, of course, games coming thick and fast at the moment for every club, particularly in the Premier Division where Longford are this season. Just to get the listener in the point of view of where we are at the moment, we're recording this on Saturday afternoon, so we won't have the results of the Cove Galway game on Saturday evening, but we will be talking about all the games on Friday night, previewing Monday's action with a look forward to Friday as well on the show. You'll probably be hearing this after the Cove Galway game kicks off, though, just to, in case you're wondering why we haven't mentioned the result of that game when you listen to this on Sunday this weekend. Dean, in terms of, I suppose, what's been going on in Longford for the last couple of weeks, let's maybe start with their game last night. We will, of course, be joined later in the programme by two First Division guests this week. We've been a little bit negligent of the First Division of the league, but given that their weekend is finished, bar that Cove Galway game, which takes place on Saturday evening, we have a better idea of where their league table is, and we can talk to them. We're going to be talking to Jamie Hollywood of Athlone, who's welcomed back into the league this year, and Liam Kerrigan, one of the UCD trifecta at the front of the team for UCD, who have been finding the net with ease. 18 goals in 6 games so far in the First Division. We'll be chatting to both of those lads later on in the show. But first, let's take a look at the Premier Division results of Friday night. All 5 teams in action, starting with the early kickoff. So we might even start with your own clash there. Richmond Park, the venue, at the site of where you were promoted not that long ago, a couple of months ago, just before Christmas. Pats, of course, your opponents this time. A bit of a different result, though. Thoughts on the game last night?
Yeah, it was obviously difficult for us. Pats ran out 3-0 winners in the end, but even talking to Stevie O'Donnell after the game, they didn't think it was a 3-0 game. It was never close to being a 3-0 game. We played really well in the first half, better side, well on top, but as the old saying goes, you have to score when you're on top, and really we could have changed the game by getting a goal in that first half when we were with the better side. Came out in the second half, and really a soft goal went in against us, and a couple of minutes later, you seen that fantastic goal from Chris Forrester, a brilliant strike, which you can't really do anything about. But from our point of view, it was 2 goals in 5 or 6 minutes and kind of killed the game then, and you put in a huge amount of work in the first half and it played well. And within a couple of minutes of the second half, the game's nearly over at that point. But, we kept plugging away and had a couple more chances to even get a consolation or get back into the game, but didn't come up. Pats held strong, and Forrester again scored very, very late in the game, just kind of capitalised on our movements forward and our defenders moving forward, trying to score a goal and trying to get back into the game, and he capitalised and scored the third goal, which finished it off for them. Like I said, it wasn't a 3-0 game, wasn't a 3-0 type of performance, but sometimes, when you're not picking up results, those things can happen and go against you. So, we need to move on to the next one and try and correct the issues from Friday night.
Yeah, I think looking at the statistics from the game, the fact that it was scoreless at the break, Pats had rested a few of their bigger names like Ronald Coughlin, John Mountain, Ian Birmingham, all on the bench, but all employed into the game between the half hour or between the half time break and the hour mark. That was really when they won the game. Their introduction, Coughlin scores within a minute or two at the start of the second half, and then, as you mentioned, Forrester's absolute belter. Some phenomenal video of that circulating as well. It's a bit of a sucker punch, having played so well for 45 to see it evaporate so quickly in the start of the second half.
Yeah, exactly. You put in a huge amount of work, and like I said, really you need to score when you're on top to change the emphasis of the game then, and obviously Stevie made a couple of changes for them to change the emphasis, get them back in the game, get them playing a little bit, because I think we'd shut down what they were trying to do, and yeah, they scored, like I mentioned, a quite soft goal that we're disappointed with, and then a brilliant goal. So in the space of a couple of minutes, they've turned the game and probably won it, as you mentioned, with those couple of changes that got them the couple of goals.
Yeah, and then of course the other early kickoff on Friday evening, same time as yourself, 5:45. We're getting used to those times now. Drogheda won, Sligo Rovers won. Kind of the tale of two blunders, maybe two goalkeeping mishaps, which we're seeing a lot of this season. Ed McGinty caught out for a long ball into the box that he just got nowhere near Chris Lyons with a relatively straightforward tap in, before Johnny Kenny again pounced on a Colin McCabe mistake to round him and stick the ball in the back of the net for his second senior goal. That's two goalkeeping errors for both of those goals, but he's been in the right place at the right time. Your thoughts on that game? I know you probably didn't get to see much of it.
Yeah, I didn't see a huge amount of it, just seeing a couple, the goals and the highlights. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple of goalkeeping errors, and we've seen it kind of around the league. And actually, a couple of episodes ago, I mentioned that the standard of goalkeeping is very high, and there's a lot of good goalkeepers. Most teams have probably two that they would consider very good. Some teams have three. And maybe that's playing into it a little bit, that, there's no definitive number ones. It could be a psychological thing, as we mentioned, with the position. So I don't know whether that's going on kind of within the goalkeeping fraternity around the league, but as you mentioned, for Johnny's goal, like he's pounced on another mistake, and it's a great way to start off your career if you can get a couple of goals kind of relatively soft, aren't they? But it just shows he's sharp, and he's aggressive, and he's looking for those errors. And if he can build on that, then going forward, he has a bright career ahead of him. And then Chris Lyons, the other beneficiary, like Chris was the same against us, benefited from a little bit of an error and scored a goal. But I think the strikers are capitalising on the mistakes and punishing the goalkeepers, so it looks a little bit worse for the goalkeepers. But overall, it was probably a reasonably fair result. I don't think either side done a huge amount more to kind of win the game. So, and probably not too unhappy either. Both managers with a point from that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose talking about goalkeeping errors, and Johnny Kenny's first goal of the season was against Finn Harps, and they had another issue. They kept Shamrock Rovers at bay. They had a really solid performance. I watched most of the game last night. Really solid performance for 75 minutes. And then another issue came out for cross. Mark Anthony McGinley found the back of the net, unfortunately, rather than his hands, and just wasn't to be. That was Rory Gaffney, of course, capitalised there. Sean Hoare adding another one with 10 minutes to go. Rovers, they're grinding out results without really managing to play well. Is that the sign of kind of champions or potential champions in the league?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they've done exactly the same against us. Probably a game that we played really well in and should have at least got a point. Couple of, obviously we thought poor refereeing decisions on that occasion got the two goals for Rovers, but last week they drag it out against Bohs. This week again they keep plugging away, and they get go to a tough place in Finn Harps and get a couple of goals and still come away with 3 points. And as you can see, they're on that run now of 30 games unbeaten. So you really can't say anything other than good stuff about Rovers, because they are grinding it out, they are winning games, they are getting the points on the board. And I think everybody's just waiting for them to pick the performance levels up a little bit, probably themselves too. And I'd say they will kind of start winning the games even more comfortably if they can just gel that new core of players together again. But it doesn't bode well for everyone else that they're not playing especially great and still winning the games.
Yeah, one side, of course, who have managed to find that little bit of form in the last week or so is Dundalk, and they ran out fairly comfortable winners down in the RSC, 3-0 in the end. Goals from all over the place. Mickey Duffy had a cracker just on 46 minutes, but Chris Shields, a penalty just before the break, and Andy Boyle, the first one. I've done them in the reverse order. I don't know why, but just reading them on the list here in front of me. But a good, solid performance from Dundalk. Never looked like losing this game, always in control, more like the Dundalk we're used to seeing in the Premier Division over the last 7 or 8 seasons.
Yeah, it was, like you said, exactly what we're used to seeing. Comfortable win, 3-0, couple of goals, a couple of decent goals in there as well, like from their point of view. So, they'd be really, really happy. That's, 4 unbeaten now, 2 draws and 2 wins. So they're gaining a little bit of momentum. Actually, since the management team moved on, they've probably just free focused themselves a little bit more. Like maybe it's made it easier in the players. I'm not sure. Like within the dressing room, but they're not. They don't seem to be as erratic as they were at the start of the season, and that probably goes to the fact that they've brought in a lot of players and they're getting a little bit more time with each other on the training pitch and seeing each other a little bit more on the pitch. You know, so yeah, I expect them to keep moving up. You know, whether they can bridge the gap to get into the title race, we'll see. But it's still very early on. Still 3 rounds of games to go. After Monday's, you know, final round of games in the opening round. So, you know, they'll be looking to push on and get into those higher places, those European places for definite.
Yeah, the reality is there's still more games left in the Premier Division than there is in the entire First Division season. So there's nothing given out yet. And we've seen, I suppose, Dundalk themselves come back from bigger gaps to turn over results in recent seasons. So I wouldn't be writing off anybody just yet. I have been very impressed by Wilfred Zahibo. He came off last night midway through the game, but he just looks a lovely level above. Like he played all by the last 15 minutes, but he seems to be a good control and influence in that midfield.
Yeah, I haven't seen a huge amount of him, but you know, the pedigree seems to be there. He seems to be, you know, very good athlete, good player, you know, that way, big presence in there as well. Like, and they probably were missing something in the middle of the park, and they seem to have found it. We're obviously going to see him Monday night whether he plays or not. But yeah, they've been looking to add more and more players, and kind of you see the press releases of players coming in, and over the last few months, I don't think anyone's known who they're going to get or where they're going to get them from. But this looks like a good player for them, so I expect them to do well this season for Dundalk.
Yeah, and of course, the last game from the Premier Division this weekend, or at least on Friday night, played so far. The top scorer in the league, obviously, you'd expect him to get 2 goals to win it for Derry in the end. But you wouldn't expect it to be Cameron McJanet. I think even he wouldn't expect himself to be sitting on the top of the top scorers table from centre half. It's a strange situation, but Derry seem to have really kicked on in the last couple of weeks since the arrival of Rory Higgins. It's given them that little bit of an impetus that I suppose the club were looking for with appointing a new manager. 2 wins under his belt from 2 games. He hasn't really put a foot wrong, despite not really getting into the game against Bohs the other night. They had it at the end, and they snatched it with probably some sloppy defending from Bohs.
Yeah, and it's the beauty of the game, really, isn't it? Because they probably looked at a handful of their first few games and said we didn't really deserve to lose all of these or most of these. And Rory's come in. I'm imagining he hasn't changed a huge amount compared to what Decky was doing. Even the team selection's not all that different, but they just have something a little bit extra. Maybe it's a 5 or 10% that they found, and even a little bit of confidence. Then, like, you know, they got the win previous week against Sligo, and coming back from 1 down in Dalymount and got 2 goals. And like you said, Cameron McJanet getting both of them. And, you know, sometimes that's all it takes, just a little bit of luck, a ball falling your way or a bounce of a ball, and you get a win, and then, you know, you kick on. So, you know, they'll obviously be delighted.
Yeah, I suppose from Bo's point of view, it's not the first time they've kind of let games get away from them at home against perceived weaker opposition in the league this season. So they'll be disappointed. I think Keith Long, I suppose it's very hard to ask you what Keith Long's going to do in this current situation, but if you were in his shoes, what would you be doing?
Yeah, I think Keith would be a bit perplexed at what's going on. Like, they played really well last week, and you know, I think most people thought it was an extremely soft decision that went against them, and they ended up losing that game, you know, against Rovers. Again, they didn't look watertight at the back, letting in the two soft really goals against Derry, and they end up losing 2-1. As you mentioned, they let in 2 against ourselves late on the game and dropped a 2-0 lead at that time. So yeah, I'm not sure what Keith's going to do, but I know Keith and Trevor will be working really hard with the players. Still some very good players there as well, and they're probably just going to have to keep plugging away and plugging away and plugging away for now, and hope they get, like as mentioned with Derry, the break of a ball or something goes their way and they get a big result that can kind of start a momentum for them.
Yeah, of course, they dropped points to Sligo as well, having been level late into the game. In terms of the league table, it looked great for Pats and Shamrock Rovers. Southwest Dublin is all over that, 20 points each from their opening 8 games. Sligo in third on 15 points after their draw with Drogheda, who themselves are level on 11 points with Finn Harps in 4th and 5th place. Dundalk moving up the table, 9 points from their opening 8 games. Bohs and Derry, who've moved off the bottom of the table with their victory in Dalymount over Bohs. Both share 7th place, 8 points between them, 1 goal in terms of goal difference separating them. Waterford in 9th on 6 points. And unfortunately, from your point of view, Dean, Longford, bottom of the table, 5th. What's the mood like in the camp after, I suppose, the result last night?
Yeah, look, it's never nice to slip down towards the bottom of the table. Still extremely early. Like, we've got 3 rounds of games to go, and obviously the fixture on Monday night that completes this round. Trying not to look. We didn't look after the first game when we won and we got our 3 points on the board. We're not really paying all that much attention to. We're just trying to correct some of the issues we're having. Like, probably 85-90% of the performances are really, really good. And it's just those 5 and 10% which really make up the difference, especially in the Premier Division. A couple of errors that we've made have been punished, and just maybe lacking a little bit of quality in the right areas to get ourselves goals. And as we all know, goals change games. If we can get our nose in front in a couple of these games, we probably win them. But we haven't managed to, and we've surrendered a couple of soft goals then as well. So just keep working on it. We don't think we're far away at all, and we have faith in the process here that we're going through, and we think that it's not going to be long before the tide turns for ourselves. And like I mentioned with Derry, like I mentioned with Bohs, especially in this league, it can be just something unusual, a bit of luck, something goes in off somebody, and you end up winning the game, and that just starts a little bit of momentum for you. So that's what we're looking for, kind of moving forward.
Yeah, we'll take a look at the fixtures for Monday and for next Friday and the weekend later on in the programme. Casting our eye down towards the First Division, where, of course, our 2 interviews come from this week on the show. Athlone and UCD, both of them will be mentioned extensively through the show. We're going to be talking to Jamie Hollywood and Liam Kerrigan, as we mentioned at the top of the show, in just a couple of minutes. But looking down through the 4 games played last night, UCD, of course, the standout result. We talked to Liam about 2 goalkeepers sent off for Wexford, 1 in the first minute of the game effectively over as a contest once they scored from the resultant free kick. We'll probably chat to Liam about that. We'll also talk to Jamie about the Athlone Town Cabinteely game. We won't dwell on them right now. Your old club, Bray Wanderers, in action against Cork City. 0-0 the final score there. What can you say about, I suppose, the game in the first instance, but also how far Cork have fallen in the last couple of months? It's been a tough watch to see them fall from where they were maybe 18 months, 24 months ago to the lower reaches of the First Division.
Yeah, obviously they've kind of dwindled down and the doldrums of the First Division now as well. So I think they knew it was going to be a big rebuild after Neil Fenn left. I think they were hoping Neil Fenn would keep them up and develop that style of football that he had with Longford, but there wasn't investment there, and they seemed to kind of overstretched over the couple of years that they were chasing Dundalk. So they've had to rebuild, and they're probably going to have to do it from the ground up. And they've scaled back a little bit here. A lot of young players. Very, very hard to win in the league with a lot of young players. So it's a difficult start, but they're not terrible. They've got some good players there as well. They're holding their own. They've picked up a couple of points and a couple of good draws, so they'll look to kick on. Still the first round of games, as we mentioned. So, let's see where they are, a little bit later in the season. From Bray's point of view, I think Gaz will be a little bit more disappointed. They seem to be the draw specialists at the moment, 5 of the 6 games, and having done reasonably well last year and probably should have, gone up, with a couple of games to go in the season. I thought they would have done a little bit better. But again, they're not in a terrible, terrible position either. It doesn't take a lot to turn those draws into wins. And I'm sure that's what Gaz is preaching to the squad. A lot of the lads they got in was very late in the day as well. So probably still just trying to find their feet a little bit. And, you'd be hoping to kind of pick up 3 points more than 1 going forward now. But
Shell's Treaty, what a cracker. It was a kind of a dull enough encounter up until about the 86th, 87th minute. And then it just all went nuts. 3 goals in the last few kicks of the game. And Treaty pulled it out of the fire with an injury time equaliser, having looked like they'd thrown it away.
Yeah, I think it was a 98-minute equaliser, wasn't it, in the end? But cracking game, or cracking excitement at the end of the game anyway, and I seen Tommy's interview after, and he was, he looked like he'd been through a marathon, let alone a game. But they're doing really well, Treaty. Like, they're really competitive. Again, we spoke to Tommy earlier in the season, or just before the season started, and he brought in a couple of lads that he thought would help them be competitive, and they've been brilliant. They haven't lost. They've won a couple of games. for the majority of that game, they looked like they were going to win it as well. And in fairness, he did mention that Chelsea had a lot of chances and probably deserved something. But to get 2 goals and then Chelsea look like they're going to win it, and then Treaty go up the other end and score. And I think it shows you the unpredictable nature of the league in general and what you can get. And I think it really shown what you've got in Treaty there, which is a team that's never going to give up. And they've made a great start to life in the League of Ireland.
I think that for me is the big thing. They'd scored early on late in the first half. Kieran O'Hanlon had put them 1-0 up, and then it was the 90th minute. Shell scored. Looked like they'd rescued a point. 6 minutes later, in injury time, Yo-Yo Maddy scored for Shelbourne, and I think everybody would have assumed that was game over. That so late in the game, you're never going to come back from that. Before Clyde O'Connell came out and stuck the ball in the back of the net, and it just sent. Now, it was a small crowd in Talca Park last night, but I saw some video footage of it, and it looked amazing. It looked like real League of Ireland, one of those big moments. Treaty still haven't been beaten in the league. They're only new, but they've never lost a game in the League of Ireland. That's kind of pretty impressive for a team that's probably got one of the smallest budgets in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, is there any kind of record there? Well, I'm not too sure, so I'm not suggesting there is. But 6-7 games in, and they haven't been beaten, and they look strong and they look competitive, and that's what that league is. It's just about being competitive, being dogged, being hard to beat, and you never know where it could take you. You could end up being one of those playoff teams, and much like ourselves last year, we played really well for 3 games and got promoted, and it could be something like that. You just never know. You never know, and I'm sure Tommy wouldn't be happy with us kind of projecting that they might be in the playoffs or might be winning the playoffs come the end of the year, because you want to keep things low key, but there's just no reason why not. They're very, very dogged. They're hard to beat, and if they can keep that rolling, like, teams won't want to play them.
Yeah, and I think Tommy's underrated as a coach and as a manager. I think people look at what he did with Limerick in the last 2 seasons. He was down there, and it's very hard to say he did well because the results weren't phenomenal. But given the turmoil that was happening off the pitch for those 2 years, what he pulled out of the hat every year was just phenomenal. Every week, to be getting lads who weren't getting paid, who had other issues with the club, who weren't being looked after from a medical point of view. And he kept that ship together for probably a year and a half longer than it really deserved to be. And don't forget, he put this Treaty United team together in less than a week, a handful of days. We talked on the show about it earlier on, and I think he's probably already, for me, regardless of how the season goes, what's happened so far, he's in with a shout for manager of the season in the first division already, just based on how competitive he's made that team so quickly. But I think Tommy's he's obviously well versed in the game. He's been involved at all levels himself as a player and as a manager, and I think he's highly underrated in terms of what he's achieved within the game in the last couple of seasons. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they cope. Will they have the strength and depth to sustain a playoff push? Who knows? Yeah. But I'm really enjoying watching it as it's developing. Let's get into the interviews, and then maybe we take a trip down to, I suppose we'll go in order of position in the league table. And we start with Jamie Hollywood and have a chat with him about his season and his return to the league with Athlone Town. Now, Athlone have been flying high in the first division so far this season, taking down a bit of a blip last night with defeat to Cabinteely, and we're joined by their midfielder, Jamie Hollywood. Jamie, you're very welcome to the podcast.
Lads, how's things? Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. I suppose we got to start with, how's the season been so far? Despite last night's blip, it's gone pretty well for Athlone so far this year.
Yeah, we've put in a lot of good performances and have taken a lot of good results. So we've been happy with the start. You mentioned last night was kind of a tough one to take. We dominated large periods of the game, probably created enough chances to win 2 or 3 games, but like any games, Dean will tell you, games that you're playing that the ball just doesn't go in for you. So we kind of felt ourselves playing in one of them games that took an own goal as well to get us on the score sheet, and said we had about 5 or 6 one-on-ones and kind of strong full chances that we didn't really capitalise on. So if you don't take your chances, you don't deserve to get much out of the game, so in which we didn't.
We talked to Adrian at the start of the season, and he kind of tempered expectations a little bit just with the likes of Galway and Shells and that in the league. Are you a little small bit surprised, pleasantly surprised by how well it started and the fact you are top of the league?
Yeah, well, look, we kind of set our own pressure, set our own demands to go out, and we didn't fear anyone going into any game. We weren't the likes of, we went to Cork and we welcomed Galway at home, and we weren't going in we were underdogs on paper, but we felt that we could go toe to toe with anyone, and which the results kind of showed that. And the lads have kind of throve off just being under that bit of pressure and kind of going from game to game and just looking at one game as it comes. So in terms of expectations, we're kind of just taking it at each game as it comes and knowing that we don't really need to fear anyone, that we can match everyone in the league, and we've been doing all right so far.
Yeah, I think Dean touched on it because Adrian did kind of say like they weren't really sure where they were going to be. Felt to be more competitive. In terms of, I suppose, what was being said behind the scenes, we know what we heard publicly, but was there a more definite kind of objective from the start to be in this position? You're top of the league despite last night's defeat.
Kind of a meeting. We all obviously try to set out goals for the start of the season, and all of us as players kind of mentioned that we want to get definitely into the playoff spot, and looking anything above that is a bonus. So targets are still set. We're still setting targets, but really we're focusing on now on a weekly basis is just each game. But just we touched on at the start of the season was we'd have playoff ambitions, and I think you probably asked any team their goals for the season, the way they strengthened up, that they would be searching for will be a playoff spot. The fact is there's a few there to try clinch come the end of the season. So that was really it then at the start.
You know, Jay, from being with Longford, like we obviously played good football, had good footballers there. I think the thing we were probably missing at the time was kind of leaders and characters. Do you think there's enough of that in that Athlone dressing room? Like that, you know, we obviously have good players there, you know, talented players, but is there enough on the kind of other side of things to drag you through a tough first division season there?
Yeah, I think we've a kind of good mix and a good blend. As I said, it's only early days now, but you can kind of see the experienced lads, the likes of Slings and Goal, and you've Curtis Bournes being around, and even you've Ado Friel there as well. That lads that would kind of are pulling and making a lot of decisions and showing a good bit of leadership qualities, and then even the young lads that wouldn't have as many games under their belt, but they still have been in experienced dressing rooms, and like being in dressing rooms like with yourself, Conor Kenna, Polly O'Connor, lads like that, where I think people individually have brought a lot together, like, you know, and like to feel draw to the lads that have been in good dressing rooms with a lot of experienced players. So I think everyone's kind of bringing their own qualities and own experience to the table, which although it mightn't be as much as others, I think we've a nice blend there that maybe when push comes to shove, that hopefully we do have enough to kind of bring us through and push us on even further.
It's been a very settled side at Athlone this year. Is that really probably part of the reasons to why you've managed to stay so consistent? Because it's more or less the same 11 players on the pitch for virtually all of every game so far, bar one or two little exceptions.
Yeah, well, we kind of, like every team, we mix around the pre-season and different shape and trying to get as many minutes as you can in the belt. I think it's fair to say that we didn't know what our strongest 11 was. And it happened that we had to go at one against UCD, and we had a strong performance, and we could have won it. We could have lost it as well, so we ended up drawing. But then didn't really give the manager a reason to change it, and then we just went on and got good results from there. So it kind of just fell into place nicely, and the performance have been good from all of us. So there's a lot of good lads that haven't been getting in, that are on the bench as well, chomping at the bit to try get in, and they've just been unlucky with the amount of kind of good performances that we've had. And like you said, one or two little injuries now, people are getting a chance. But again, I think we've a good kind of strength and depth that when we deal with injuries, that people can come in and replace them, and hopefully not really disrupt the good performances that we've been having.
On the score sheet last week, Jay, I know when we were at Longford, we didn't set out too many targets for goals from midfield, but are you thinking about kind of adding that to your game going forward this year? Have you got a little target in mind for chipping in with goals?
Yeah, look, I've kind of set my own goals each year. I know it's kind of a bit reluctant to playing as a two, like playing with yourself. The two of us were kind of sitting there, have to do McGlade's defending, like, you know, the likes of that. So we couldn't really commit too many bodies forward. But look, Adrian gives us the license to play. I find myself in the box nearly every attack with late runs coming in. So like it'd be great to just get over, get close to double digits, and it'd be something that I'm kind of hoping to, because the chances are there. I think I do have the license to get forward, and like having Daniel McKenna in there playing with me, he likes to sit and push me on. So there's there's no real reason why I couldn't be making last week's occurrence more of a regular thing.
You spoke about the last minute draw with UCD. Considering how well they've done in some of their games over the recent weeks, this weekend they had a big win in Wexford. They've also had a big score down in Cove. I think they're plus 13 on the league table already, which is just huge. Does that make your result in Belfield back in the first day of the season all that little bit more kind of, I suppose, impressive in terms of how it would have been taken on the night?
Yeah, I think across the board, it's hard. Your first game of the season is always going to be a bit scrappy. We probably didn't see the best of UCD. They didn't see the best of us. So I think a draw probably was a fair result at the time. We had chances, like we had a chance in the first 20 seconds to go 1-0. That goes in, it probably changes the complex of the game. But as I said, it's always scrappy, and it's always nobody wants to lose the first game of the season. You want to get points on the board as soon as you can. So I think it'd be a different game once UCD come to our place and we meet them again. I think both teams will probably be a bit more expansive, and like UCD will probably find their rhythm as well now and putting up some great numbers, so we're looking forward to that game. But yeah, no, it is looking, it's a great point. We could have easily lost the game. It took us, as it was 94-minute equaliser, so it was great to just get the point on the board, and we've kicked on from then. So but now we are looking forward to playing them again.
Obviously UCD up the top, but so are Shells, and that's coming up next for you. So do you reckon, how do you see that game going? It's going to be a big challenge for you. Probably, tell a lot about your season going forward, how you get on in that game. So he's looking forward to it.
Yeah, look, we still find ourselves top at the moment. So obviously a loss there would mean we give up that spot, and it's something that we don't want to do. Like, we want to kind of stay there and put the pressure on others, but it's still early days. Look, Shells are a good side. They have a lot of good experienced players, and there are a lot of young lads coming through as well that have heaps of quality. So we know it's going to be a tough game. It's always is. I don't think I've ever played Shells and it hasn't been a tough game. So it's hard to go to Talca and get a result. But again, we don't really fear anyone going into this league. We're going to go with the same mindset and same plan as we have for most of our games, and probably whether there's changes to be made from the manager's point of view, the kind of philosophy still stays the same, and we're still going to try put our stamp on the game as going into their backyard and hopefully causing a bit of an upset.
Yeah, I suppose it's great. I think it's great this year in the First Division, seeing teams that are unfancied, like yourselves and maybe Treaty as well, to some extent, getting results that people wouldn't expect, but also teams who have started poorly pulling off results against yourselves, like Cabo last night. It really looks to be really, really tight in that division. How do you see it playing out over the next couple of weeks? How much are you even looking at the league table yet? It's still very early in the season.
Look, as I said, as I mentioned earlier on, we're not really focused on league tables, but we want to just keep, and then we find ourselves at the top, but we're just taking one game at a time. And like next week means that we could give up that spot, but we're going to still play to just our strengths and do what we can and control what we can do. But look, it's one game at a time. We're not going to look at, I think every team can take points off any team, so there's going to be slip-ups, that we're going to drop more points, we're going to gain more points. There's teams that, I think Wexford have found themselves unfortunate as well to be sitting and they haven't got a point yet, but they came to our place and caused those problems, and I feel they will definitely cause other people's problems. And again, Cabinteely last night turning us over. I just think the quality in the league has kind of come up this year. I think it's one of the toughest years I've seen it now, with the amount of teams, some full-time teams, part-time teams, but they're all have a lot of quality in the team in their own teams. So I just think it's any team can beat anyone, really.
Yeah, obviously, just so you touched on there, Jay, when you get into a round of games nearly into the season, you're looking around saying everyone can beat everybody. So, the attitude probably from nearly every club is, why not us? There's everyone looked at Chelsea to win the league, and maybe Galway being a full-time team, but I'm sure everybody's thinking, why not us, in terms of challenging for the title, and then if it doesn't work out, picking up a playoff place after that. There's no reason why it can't be pretty much anyone in the league at this point. No,
100%. As you said there, why not? I said, what's the worst thing that can happen is teams to fall into the playoff spots. Like Treaty have they have unbeaten still. So ourselves as well, doing well. And look, any team we know, every game you're looking at there's no easy games. So I just think from everyone's manager's point of view and team's point of view, you have to be on the ball for And look, the best team does win the league at the end of it, but I don't think in any dressing room in the league that people wouldn't fancy themselves going into a game. So it sets up for a great scene anyway to see out the season, see how they get on.
Last week on the show, we Chris Shields joining us, and we talked about the playoff final in 2012, where Dundalk won the game, survived, and went on to do what they've done for the last 7 or 8 years. And he talked about maybe the sliding doors moment. If they'd lost that game, where would they have ended up? But he talked about how he probably would have ended up maybe a bit of a journeyman around the first division or dropped out of the game entirely. I suppose you've had a little taste of that experience, maybe a little bit over the last 12 months. You were with Longford and Dean down in 2019, and then you didn't play in the league last year. You went down to play with Crumlin in the Leinster Senior League. Some would argue there's not much difference in the standard. What was your experience, I suppose, in terms of that drop down to the intermediate ranks and where it fits into the whole scheme of things?
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. I was able to get a lot of games in, which I feel like I needed since coming back from my injury. After I was out for 6 or 7 months, I felt like I just needed to go and play games and get the kind of match fitness back. Crumlin's very professional in everything that they did. It was great to kind of keep that commitment levels up, but at the same time I still missed the Friday night lights, still missed, probably people probably think I'm mad, but still missed that level of commitment that was travelling for training sessions 3 or 4 nights a week and going around the country and playing against teams each week, and that was what I kind of missed the most. And being able to get back into the league obviously this year and being doing well and getting games under my belt again at this level is just great, and I'm happy to be here. Was
that always the plan? Have you been kept in touch with a couple of the managers in the league, or was it just how did the Athlone move come about?
I went back in training with Longford for in their running with the playoffs. So I had planned, and I was supposed to sign back in the window, but the transfer window kind of fell through. The transfer fell through for paperwork reasons. Because the Leinster Senior League hadn't officially ended, I wasn't able to transfer. So I just kept training with them, and obviously when they went up to Premier, the likes of Dean, they strengthened up their squad, and I just felt like probably wouldn't play as much games going from into the Premier. So Athlone got in touch with myself, and then I liked what they had to say, and there was a great chance there for me to go and get regular game time and compete in the first division again, which I enjoyed playing with Drogheda, finish up Drogheda, and Longford I enjoyed playing. So I felt like I had more to give. Probably an unrealistic move to try. The fact when the lads went up into the Premier would go there and get games would have been a bit of a challenge that maybe was a bit unrealistic. So coming back, but look, I'm enjoying it now, and I'm getting game time, which is all I really want.
Yeah, well, listen, it's great to see you back in the league. It's great to see you at the top of the league as well, although our next guest might have something to say about that when we talk to him in a few minutes. Liam Kerrigan from UCD will be with us in a minute. But Jamie, thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate you dropping in and kind of filling us in on what appears to be a really good feel-good factor around Athlone at the moment. And you're obviously a huge part of that on the pitch as well in recent weeks. Thanks very much.
Lads, thanks very much for having me.
Cheers, Jake.
Now, we normally have some Sligo representation in the form of Alan Keane on the show, but this week we're going to have to make do with one of the younger contingent of the Sligo footballing fraternity. He's not playing with Sligo, though. He's playing with UCD, having made the move up there almost 2 years ago now. Liam Kerrigan joins us on the show. Liam, you're very, very welcome.
All right, cheers for having me.
You're an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Obviously, as I mentioned in the introduction, 2 years now almost at UCD. It's been fairly bountiful for you. Plenty of goals, plenty of chances, plenty of appearances. How are you enjoying life in Belfield?
It's great, to be fair. Lovely place to be. You have everything at your doorstep. I suppose we live on the campus and about a 5-minute walk away from the pitches and the gym. You know, like I don't have a car or anything. I barely leave UCD. Like literally everything is here for me on my doorstep. Like I said,
it's you have a great style of play there at UCD. Obviously, Andy, encourages you to play and absolutely suit your game. But especially that front three last year, I know you lost Yo-Yo out of it, but you seem to just rotate players in. The next man in line. Like, What's the coaching like there, really, that brings that front three to the fore? And we've seen, obviously, you scored a lot of goals already this season as a club.
I suppose it's nearly like getting to know your players that are playing alongside you. Like, all the training is all short, sharp stuff, like focus on technique. And I suppose you do see it on like Friday night that we do try and play most games anyways. Like, some days you have to adapt, but like we try and play and try and link up with each other and keep on the ground and stuff. Like, just try and, I suppose we're always trying to attack. I suppose last season we won by big margins, like a lot of time where we could have conceded a good few, but we nearly just to win our games we had to outscore them, like, because sometimes we let in a few, but very open games, I suppose.
Yeah.
How nice is it to be part of a team that like everyone wants to win when you go out on a Friday night, but just there's something about UCD maybe in the last decade or so, where it really is seeming to be about developing players and developing a style of play and giving people the tools to play the game rather than worrying necessarily about the result on a Friday night.
Yeah, it's like you just play with freedom. Like, you're not afraid to try stuff. You're trying stuff in training all week, every week, and then I suppose it comes into the game on Friday. Like, no one's afraid to try things. Like, I suppose we've no fans like giving out, no one slating us from a sideline. Like, so we are like, you do have the confidence to do things that maybe if you had a few thousand behind you, you'd be thinking, I won't try this in case it doesn't come off, and you might get a bit of stick for it. Like,
there's nothing quite like a roar from the showgrounds, I suppose. Tell us about your roots. Tubbercurry native, obviously, not the first Tubbercurry person to make goal scoring in the League of Ireland an art form. You've been a Sligo Rovers fan probably since you were able to say the word Sligo Rovers. There's some great photos of you as mascot with Raf Kataro, obviously, who I'm talking about. Talk to us about, I suppose, the route into the game and how you found yourself being offered the opportunity to go to UCD 2 seasons ago.
I suppose start with Real Tubber, and my dad took the teams. Like, I suppose we had no managers, and he was the one who had to step in. Like, and then you had your Sligo Leitrim with the Kennedy Cup squad and all, and then eventually for that short season of the under-17s, I think we took a different approach to it than other teams. We only signed players who were born in 99 and 2000, even though 98 could play, so it was a development season straight away. Like, and then the next season we were ready to go when the longer seasons came in, and I had great coaches all the way up, like Niall Harrison, Jinxie, Danny O'Leary, then Dinky at 19s, and Raf was in with the 19s, and Johnny Dunleavy. Like, you have your people looking after you like straight away, and then I suppose into the first team I've had a few managers, but all managers who would be looking to bring in younger players and looking after us, I suppose, as well.
Obviously, UCD is a great place to kind of learn your trade and get games, senior games, but it's usually a stepping stone to kind of bigger and better things. Like, do you have ambition to kind of go on, play across the water, or play full time professionally, like after you leave UCD?
Yeah, definitely. Like, that is the goal. Like, I have my degree. Like, it was always a thing. My mother was on to me the whole time for the degree. Like, that education. Like, I have to get an education as well, because football won't be there forever. Like, I suppose the percentage of players who really make a living out of that, they never have to work again, is very low. Mm-hmm. So that was always, like, she had that sort of drilled into me. But definitely would like to continue with the football after, like, in a full time, maybe across war, anywhere really. Just I would definitely like to play full time for a few years, anyways.
Yeah, academics was always one of your strong suits. I remember spending a bit of time with you one afternoon, posing a few maths problems. Yeah, it was really boring, but some of the lads just threw the eyes of the head and they really couldn't handle it. I remember Luke McNicholas, maybe Niall Moran as well. They tried but failed, but you got your head around it and you were really good at the puzzles and the kind of those things. So you're obviously a bright boy as well. What are you studying?
Commerce. So I suppose a bit of business, bit of maths in it.
Well, in terms of, I suppose, what you might have picked up in those couple of years studying, I know it's a bit of a strange situation because you're not really in college. A lot of it's been done remotely. But when you look at the League of Ireland as a business, or a League of Ireland club as a business, where would you think, and I realize I'm putting you on the spot here now, it's not an impromptu quiz, I like doing this to you, but where do you see maybe some simple changes that could potentially be made within the league to help everybody, whether it's from a financial point of view or a profile point of view?
I definitely think, I suppose lately a lot of clubs have been good on the marketing side, and like you can see there's Instagram pages, Facebook pages, even TikTok pages now. That's the new thing, like, and they're definitely good on that side of things. I just think maybe I like to personally, I'd be on the money side of things. I'd like to look after that. That's what I would like to do after college. Like not accounting. I do find that difficult enough, but maybe taxes or something like that. But I don't really know how the clubs work. But that would be the more I'd be more interested in rather than the marketing stuff.
Yeah, I suppose Conor Byrne came out of that kind of world in UCD. He ended up as a development officer in Sporting Fingal, I think, back in the day. In terms of, I suppose, the next couple of weeks, UCD, you're hot on the heels of Athlone. They slipped up last night. You're closing that gap at the top of the table. We might talk about the game last night because it was a strange one. Like, I don't like criticizing referees, but handball in the first minute of the game, goalkeeper gets sent off, then his replacement gets sent off before the hour mark. Yeah. It was never really a contest, was it?
It was a weird one now, to be fair. I've never seen two keepers sent off, I don't think. I was texting my father and he was reckon he's never seen it either. Like, you know, you've seen, I think Rio Ferdinand went in goals one time, but normally it's for an injury and a red card maybe. But I'd never seen two keepers sent off. But I suppose they was straight away, like they were, like, I think it was literally the first minute, like first nearly kick of the game. And like straight away you knew like it's not going to be sort of good for them, because what you meant to do with 10 men for 90 minutes of a game, like you're backs up against the wall straight away.
How close were you to the incident, Liam? Did you think he was outside the box?
I think he was outside the box, but I don't know the rules on it, that whether it should have been a yellow or a red. Like I was surprised. Like I did think it was outside the box time, like I was claiming it anyways. But
yeah.
When I seen the red card, I was a bit shocked myself, but I actually don't know the rules on it. So
yeah, I'm not. I have to be honest, I'm not au fait with it myself. But did he hand that outside the box? You can't really tell from the video. Is the short thing, but. Yeah. Like, I think it was only a goal scorable opportunity because the defenders left it to him. I think the defenders were all like, the whole situation, I don't know, a bit of common sense, yellow card, free kick, continue the game probably would be best, but who are we to say the laws of the game? In terms of the actual, I suppose you can only be what's put in front of you. So as a team, what do? You're 2 minutes in, a player up, a goal up. How do you motivate yourself to kind of keep the foot to the mat and get that 6-0 result at the end of the day?
You knew straight away after the goal, like, you know, you'd be celebrating, but everyone knew, like, you can't get complacent here, because you've seen it before, like early red cards, teams can just slip up. Like, they're the games where you can't slip up. So it does take a lot of concentration, and I suppose it took us a while to get the second one. Like, we probably weren't moving it quick enough until the second goal. I suppose we weren't moving the ball quick enough or doing the right things, but I suppose eventually we got our heads around it nearly, that we can't like take the foot off the pedal here, or you possibly could get turned over, like even though you were a man up for 90 minutes.
In terms of the season going forward, Liam, as well, have you set out a target of what you kind of think you can achieve here? I know, like, a lot of people talk about shells, a lot of people talk about like the investment that Athlone have made, Galway being full time, and I said to Breifne on the previous podcast, like, never write off UCD, because I seen it a couple of years ago when UCD went and won the league. Like, do you do that in the dressing room? Do you set out a target to win the league, or is it just about being as competitive as possible?
I suppose this year, like, the league, the standard of it is mad. Like, it's so many good players, but I suppose we're looking at it, like, thinking, especially now, like, it's so tight already. Like, I think it's going to be like that for the year. So you're thinking, why can't we win the league? Like, and literally anyone could win it, from nearly top 6, 7, 8 clubs nearly. Like, I don't know, you couldn't put money on who'd get playoffs or who'd win the league at this stage anyways. So you do be thinking, like, obviously you take it every game at a time, but you do be thinking, why couldn't we? Like,
Yeah, in terms of, I suppose, the league and how competitive it is at the top there, UCD, like 13 goals of a positive goal difference already, 18 goals scored, only 6 games. What is it about the way you play and I suppose how you approach the game as a team that allows you to go and do that? Or is it just down to having a couple of really, really class players, including yourself, obviously, at the top end of the pitch?
I think it's the style of play, really. I think like the way we play sort of suits all our players nearly, and like everyone in UCD, like they do like keep ball on the ground, play channel sort of thing. Like and then obviously we've Colum up front who, if you give him one chance, you're nearly guaranteed a goal. Like it's crazy how easy he nearly finds space and just hits back in net. Like
You have a treaty coming up this week, Liam. I'm sure Andy does a lot of prep work with you on all the games, but how you prepare for a team that like haven't been in existence so far? I know you'll know some of the players because they've been around the league, but what sort of prep work are you expecting for that game? They've been extremely dogged so far this season and made it really hard for the teams they played against.
I'd imagine it's the same every week. Like you just sort of look at teams and see where do their goals come from, where do the goals against come from. Like you try find something, but they're not conceding many goals and they're going very well. And I think they're level on points with us now, and they're unbeaten as well. So I'd say it's going to be a tough game, like for both teams. And then until the break, we have 4 really tough games. Like I think we're playing 3 of the top 4 anyways, or including ourselves.
Yeah, you're playing Shells in 3 weeks, and you've got Treaty and Cork in the next weeks, and Athlone after Shells. Yeah,
Athlone before. Yeah. So like until the break, it's going to be 4 very tough games. Like every game's tough, but you'd imagine like when Athlone are top, Shells are and Treaty are nearly in and around us, and Cork are going well now at the moment as well. So.
Yeah, in terms of, I suppose, the experience of being at UCD, a lot of people kind of have this perception of UCD being, I suppose, a really young squad and a young dressing room. But you've had that experience of spending maybe a year or two in a standard senior, like mid-table dressing room in the Premier Division with full-grown men, 28-year-olds, 30-year-olds, likes of Dave Cole, even Raf. He won't mind me saying it, but he was closer to 40 than 30 in terms of yeah, sorry, Raf. But like you've been in that dressing room with men, and now you've gone back to probably been one of the older ones in that dressing room, despite only being 20 years of age. How does that work, and how does that dynamic work when you move probably up to that level and then back down to a kind of your own age group again?
It is strange at the time, I suppose. Like I'm 20 and I'm probably nearer to the oldest than the youngest at this stage, which is like crazy when you think about it. Like I'm probably one of the most experienced on team, and I don't think I might just about have 50 games. Like, so it is weird enough. But I suppose so. Once again, it comes to that freedom. Like young people come in, and they like you don't really play with fear, so it probably benefits. Like say having no older fellas. Like you don't. I suppose you can look up to older fellas as well, but like you can be sort of intimidated at the same time. Like I know it's dog eat dog in football, like, and whereas here, like it's, as you said, it's like development, but we're trying to win, and playing with the freedom really stands to us.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of the locality in the northwest here where I am at the moment, we better ask you the question, will that future that you talked about potentially be in the bit of red, or is that something that has come up in your own thoughts yet?
It hasn't, nothing yet, but we shall see. One of them ones, isn't it? That's the only answer I can give you.
Yeah, and finally, before we let you go, we're running out of time here, but we had Jack Keeney, obviously a teammate of yours. You both made that same move at the same time. You've played together the whole way up in Sligo and now at UCD. He described getting a couple of weeks ahead of you, maybe up at the time, and he said that he was like a father figure to you, and Paul Doyle was a father figure to him. What's it like playing with your grandfather in the middle of midfield?
Two boys looking after me now. That he learned the ropes that in that 2 weeks, and straight away I'm just following him around nearly. And Doyler, to be fair, looked after us, got us spot in the house, got us, like he had the care, bring us everywhere, and also two boys looking after me.
Yeah, it's good to be the baby of the situation at times. Liam, thank you so much for dropping in. The very best of luck to you this weekend as you take on another challenge in the first division. But I'm sure no more than any other game this season, you'll be hitting it up to the front and putting goals past whatever defence you come up against this year. No pressure. Yourself and Colin, we're expecting big things off you this year. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. No
Cheers, Liam.
Two lads you'd be well familiar with. Jamie, of course, with your time together at Longford, and Liam, I suppose, playing against them in the first division over the last 2 seasons. Your thoughts on how well they've started the year?
Yeah, UCD have been brilliant, and I said it on the podcast, like when we were talking about other teams and some of the high-profile teams in the first division, you can't write UCD off. Seen them a couple of years ago go and win the league, always free scoring. Just 3 or 4 times now they've gone to Wexford and put up big scores. So, and got 4 at Cove earlier in the year, 6 again this weekend. So they've started really, really well, and it's that style of play and that free flowing football and the goals that they're actually exciting to watch and they're good to watch. So brilliant from them. And then Athlone, like much the same. They're they started really well, top of the league. They'll be bitterly disappointed to lose at home to Cabinteely, having started brilliantly in the other games. But again, the nature of the league, you just never know when you're going to come up against a team that's just going to be stubborn and stick it to you. And that's what happened to them last night. But they're still top going into next week's clash with Shells.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about the first division this year, is that there's 5 or 6 teams very capable of taking points off each other. There's probably 8 or 9 teams, but there's 5 or 6 that look like they're going to be competitive at the top end of the table this season. Long way to continue. It's great to see that actual competition rather than kind of be able to predict with fairly level accuracy in terms of what's actually going to happen. The Premier Division, of course, has a full round of fixtures on Monday. You're in action yourself. You host Dundalk in Bishopsgate at 5:45. Same time as Sligo Rovers and St. Pat's do battle in the showgrounds down in Sligo. Derry and Finn Harps taking part in the Northwest Derby at the traditional time, 7:45 on the bank holiday Monday. 2 afternoon games, of course, as well. Drogheda and Bohs at 2, while Shamrock Rovers will host Waterford in Tala at 2 p.m. as well. Your thoughts on those games? Obviously, you'll be involved with Longford Dundalk, if selected, of course. What's your own thoughts? You didn't come on last week. Are you available for the game? Will you be part of the matchday squad?
Yeah, I was available for Friday's game, so that was my first one back from injury, so should be available for selection. Obviously, that comes down to Dara and what his decision is for Monday's game.
In terms of Dundalk, any bit of fear coming in at all? Haven't seen how they have been opened up in the last couple of weeks and really kind of cut loose in a couple of games.
No, don't fear anybody in the league, really. Like, I've played in the league for long enough, and from our point of view, we've done reasonably well for the majority, but just kind of those small little decisions or little mistakes kind of going against us. So we've got to approach it with confidence that we can get something out of the game very early in the season yet. So this is our next opportunity to get points, so we've got to do our best to get something out of it.
I suppose from your point of view, you'll be looking for the teams just above you in the division, and maybe not to get points as well, and hopefully pick some up yourselves. There's a few teams within touch and distance. Waterford just 1 point ahead. They make the journey to Tala. Unlikely to see them picking up points there, the way form has been for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't write off anybody's chances in games, but Rovers look strong. Like we mentioned, that they're not probably playing brilliant, but still winning games. So we'd see, can they put in the performance to go with the result this time around. But from our point of view, as you mentioned, it'd be nice if Waterford didn't pick up anything, because we want to climb above them again. But we got to focus on ourselves. I'm sure that's what Waterford's saying as well. They're not looking at Longford or Derry or something. They'll be focused on their own game against Shamrock Rovers, and hopefully making it tough for Rovers. And they'll probably feel they can get something if they play well.
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend of football. I'm looking forward to it. What I really like about Monday's fixtures is that they're spread out. You can sit and comfortably watch 3 games on a bank holiday Monday if you want. I'd love to see more of that across every weekend, but it is nice to see kind of options this weekend in terms of when you want to watch a game. We might look forward to the following Friday night's fixtures as well, just when we're here. You're up to the Brandywell 5:45 on Friday, while Dundalk and Sligo do battle. I suppose a lot will depend on how Monday goes in terms of what approach you take to these, or does it really matter? Like, we hear a lot of, we take every game as on its own merits. Is that really the situation, or does losing a couple of games kill that momentum?
Yeah, well, like you can't, from us, and I'm going to give you some cliches, but we can't look at Friday because we have a game Monday, and like you mentioned, we can't really start preparing for Friday even until after Monday anyway. So it could be a case that you have a couple of knocks, a couple of injuries, possibly a suspension. You never know. Opposition could have a couple of knocks or a suspension. They could change their team a little bit. So even before you get the analysis of how they've played. So yeah, very difficult to know like how you're going to prepare for that one, because a lot of it depends on what happens on Monday as well.
Then Saturday, there's 3 games all taking place at 6 o'clock. Waterford, Drogheda, Bohs, Finn Harps, St. Pat's, Shamrock Rovers. Anything there that sticks out? Would you be sitting down to watch one of those games yourself with the evening off?
Well, Pats and Rovers, isn't it? That's going to stick out because top of the table clash, and they've played already this season, first game, and looked really strong. Pats did. So let's see, can they keep it up? Can they keep that momentum going? Can they mount a title challenge here? Because I think everyone's expecting Rovers to kind of pull away, but it's been a good first round of games for Pats. Can they kick off the second round in the same vein?
Yeah, and then we have a bit of an anomaly when we look at the first division fixtures, because Cove and Galway takes place after we record this, but probably before you hear the episode. But there is a full round of games next week. Do you want to maybe put yourself on the line and say how Cove and Galway is going to go this evening?
It hasn't been a brilliant start for Galway, and we talked to obviously James from Cove last week, and they were looking at really making their home games difficult. I can see a draw, and I know that's sitting on the fence, but it just feels like one of those games. And Galway, I don't know if they've enough to go and win that one, and Cove are stubborn at home. So I think it does point to a draw, and I know that's probably not exciting for anyone listening, but that's where I see it at the moment.
Okay, we'll fly through next Friday's fixtures in the first division. Cabinteely, Cove, win, lose, draw.
For who? Cabinteely, Cove.
One word answer. Cabinteely, Cove.
Cabinteely.
Galway and Bray.
Draw, specialist, Bray Wanderers.
Shells and Athlone, top of the table clash.
Really good one here. I think that could be a good game. 3-3.
UCD and Treaty, another top of the table clash.
Loads of goals from UCD. Treaty not giving them up, so something's got to give there. Let's see how it goes.
And the final game of the fixture list for the first division next week, Cork City versus Wexford, the 2 bottom sides in the table, 1 win between them, and that came on the opening night for Cork. So it's been a long while since either one of them have tasted victory. Realistically, how do you think that's going to go? Wexford, of course, 2 goalkeepers suspended now after 2 red cards last night. Tom Murphy's back in nets, it looks.
Yeah, it looks like Tom's going to get a chance, and he was obviously very good for him last season. I wouldn't be surprised if Wexford win this one, just if they got something from Jack Doherty or one of their players like that have a little bit of skill or a little bit of momentum there that can get them something. Like, so Cork don't seem in a great place at the minute. I wouldn't be surprised if Wexford could win it, but like realistically, you could be looking at another stalemate there between the 2 sides.
Well, Dean, that's it for the week. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you also to Jamie Hollywood and to Liam Kerrigan of Athlone and UCD, respectively, for dropping in and talking to us all about what it takes to get to the top of the first division. Something you're well familiar with over the years, Dean, having played in the first division for the last couple of seasons with Longford. Thoughts on the week ahead? What are you looking forward to most?
Obviously looking forward to our own games, but aside from that, I think the Pats Rovers one is going to be the kind of bigger one at the end of the week, and top of the table clash. So hopefully that's a good game to watch more than anything, and a good showcasing for the league.
Yeah, I think at this stage of the season, 2 teams well clear at the top of the table, and even further clear from 4th place at the top of the table. I think it's going to be an interesting clash. We may have found a new rivalry unless Dundalk can really put on a serious run of form. I think they're the only team in the league that really have the capability to catch either of them at this point in time. But I think we're looking at our top 2 on Friday night in Tala. It's going to be an interesting game, all right. Dean, thanks very much for joining us, to the 2 lads, and to you for listening or watching. Don't forget you can subscribe on wherever you find your podcasts. We're also on YouTube as well if you want to watch us waffling on about the League of Ireland. Dean, we'll chat to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Ref.